Good evening and welcome to the earnings review, your tidbits into company financials and operational insights. Thank you for joining us as we broadcast from Hampton Studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. I'm Ibn Mabunda, your money man. On the show, we engage top echelon executives to get you up to speed with first-hand information. We also chat with the most competent analysts on the market just to ensure you're finished with relevant and comprehensive market analysis. Tonight, we focus on SeedCo Ltd, a listed and a leading seed producer, not just in Zimbabwe, but also on the continent. Let's get into some details where the operations of the firm are concerned. Now, the group has been in operation in Zimbabwe over the past 8 years and is of course listed on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. The group produces as well as supplies hybrid maize seed to commercial farmers and is also invested in the production of legumes as well as other cereals in that regard. The group has a dedicated research and development unit that is responsible for producing hybrid crop seeds as well as non-hybrid seed varieties. Follow me as I take you on a jog down memory lane to get you up to speed with how the group has fared over the past decades and has come to be to date. In 1940, this saw the birth of the Seed Maize Association, the SMA, and in 1957, another entity was also formed that would be known as the Crop Seed Association. Given the common interests in the different entities that were at play, they decided to merge, resulting in the formation of an entity that would be known as the Seed Corporation. 1991, these two entities, now under one umbrella, went on to acquire the Kadoma Research Station, and in the year 1991, the firm went on to open a Stapleford facility. 1996 would be a game changer as the firm went on to list on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. With increased financial capacity, the firm would expand beyond the borders of Zimbabwe. 1997 would mark the acquisition of Semok in Mozambique. 1998 would mark entrance into Zambia through SeedCo Zambia, and in 2000 the firm went on to form an establishment that would oversee its regional operations, and this marked the entrance into Botswana as well as Malawi through SeedCo International. 2004 would mark entrance into the Kenyan market, and in 2006 the firm here in Zimbabwe went on to acquire the Cotton Seed Company. 2010, a Tanzanian unit would be established, and in 2015 an equity arrangement was reached through Lima Grain. 2018 would mark the unbundling of the regional operations under SeedCo International, and now of course SeedCo International is now listed on the Botswana as well as the Zimbabwe stock exchanges. Let's look at how the group is organized. The group has operations in 10 African countries, wherein it has over 85,000 acres of land under seed production. Its products are distributed in an additional 5 African countries, bringing its footprint to 15 African countries. The group is well invested across the seed production value chain and boasts of 6 plants spread across the continent of Africa, a maize cob drying facility that produces over 4,000 tons per cycle, as well as greenhouses plus warehouses with a storage capacity of over 7 million square feet. The group operates through several subsidiaries as well as some key associates. A quick look at some of them. I mentioned of course the SeedCo International, wherein it has a 27% stake, the Cotton Zimbabwe, where it has a 40% stake, and the Prime Seed, where it has a 51% shareholding in a joint venture. The Lima Grain of course is also on the table, which is a vehicle wherein it operates in Zambia. Some vital stats there: with a current share price of 1,500 cents, SeedCo has a market capitalization of over 3.5 billion Zimbabwean dollars. The share price has surged over 689% since the year started, vis-a-vis a consumer staples that is up over 450%. Comparatively, the ZSE All Share is up over 450% to date. Some key developments where the group is concerned: the group is in the process of installing an artificial seed drying plant here in Zimbabwe, which would pretty much be a game changer, as it will allow the group to increase its capacity by over 20%. In addition, this facility is expected to reduce the seed import figure in as far as the group is concerned. This, of course, concludes the How You section of our show tonight. In just a moment, we will be crossing over to an earlier conversation that we had with the Group Chief Executive, Mr. Morgan Nzwere. Now, don't go anywhere. Now, joining us on the earnings review is the Group Chief Executive for SeedCo Ltd, a listed seed producer on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Morgan, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on the earnings review.
Good afternoon.
Now, to get the ball rolling, can you take us through what has been the impact on your operations in as far as the pandemic is concerned?
Yes, it's a struggle. It's just like anyone else in the world. It's a pandemic. No one was really prepared for it. So we are facing the same challenges that everyone else is facing. I think for us, the advantage that we have is that almost all countries have declared agriculture an essential service. So we've been able to go about with our activities despite the challenges that everyone else is facing. Now, obviously, when your customers are in trouble, when the environment is in trouble, even if you are able to continue operating, the liquidity of your customers is going to be affected because they are not doing business, they are not earning incomes, and that ends up impacting on our business as well. Touch wood, for now, we've been doing reasonably well, but then again, that's because we have been out of season. We start selling seed when the rains come, September, October, November, December. That's our main selling season. So for now, while all this has been going on, it really has been the period where we are producing, and therefore there's less interaction with third parties, and as a result, the activities haven't been that much affected.
And still on that, Morgan, what has been the impact in as far as your supply chains are concerned, considering the fact that you have, of course, a footprint that is spread across different regions on the continent of Africa?
Yeah, so like I just said earlier on, in terms of the distribution network, it hasn't been that much affected as yet. And that's largely because when the pandemic broke out in March, we had already finished selling our seed. We normally finish selling early January. So we start selling around the end of September and finish early January. So this period when the pandemic has been wreaking havoc, it's actually not our main selling season. We are expecting to start selling in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And we hope by then things will have settled down a bit in our markets. In terms of supplies, our growers bringing in seed to our factory, we really haven't had challenges, and that's largely because agriculture has been declared an essential service. So farmers have been able to harvest and deliver their product to our factories, and we've been able to carry on with the processing activities. Obviously, there are issues to do with some inputs whose supply chain has been affected, things like packaging or chemicals, and those we are finding that they are taking a little bit longer to get. But otherwise, generally, as a business, I think at the moment we are in a bit of a privileged position in the sense that we've been out of season and we've been able to continue with our production activities, and we are now to go into our selling season.
Now, this conversation is coming pretty much at a time that is just after your AGM, where you issued a trading update with regards to how you have fared over the past several months. And I want us just to have a look at some of those key matrices that you alluded to during the annual general meeting. And of particular interest would be the fact that in as far as your winter cereals are concerned in the Zimbabwean market, you reported a 13% increase in as far as the volumes are concerned. Can you shed light as to what has informed that very narrative?
Well, so I think, first of all, there's a fairly big government input program, but I think electricity was also a little bit more reliable this year. I think we kind of benefited from most other industries downsizing, which meant electricity was available for irrigation. So we saw a number of farmers taking up winter cereals as well. but it's very much a seasonal business. It just depends on the season that you have. I think this last season was a good season for winter cereals, and the numbers are slightly up compared to prior year.
And of course, the presentation touched on the operations of SeedCo and a little bit on the operations of SeedCo International. For Nigeria as well as Kenyan markets, there was a 150% increase in the first 5 months of the year. And as far as the sales volumes are concerned, what informed that very trajectory?
Okay, so in Nigeria, there's a new input program which has been initiated by the central bank, backed by the central government, where they are trying to promote adoption of hybrids in the Nigerian market. And they have been ordering quite a lot of seed from us. Compared to prior year, the numbers have been quite significant. I think by this time last year, we had sold about 350 metric tons. As I speak to you, we've probably sold about 1,500 metric tons. And that's really largely thanks to that program. But then we are also active on the open market, and there's still a season to come for the open market where we are hoping we should be able to benefit from as well. In Kenya, better rains. In the previous year, they were affected by the rainfall season that they had. But we had adequate stocks. So those stocks that we have, coupled with the need to refill granaries because the previous year had been a bad year in terms of drought, and now they've got some water for planting that has created that early demand. But again, I must emphasize that these increases are coming from low volumes, from low bases in the prior year. But still for us, we see some huge positives there.
I will come back to these Nigerian and Kenyan markets a bit later in our conversation. A key indicator that you did make reference to was that to do with your trade receivables, which were sitting at about $50 million about 4 or 5 months back, but you've been able to recover $18 million. How have you been able to achieve that, and what is the outlook in as far as your liquidity is concerned?
So there's general liquidity issues when you look at the markets that we operate in. In terms of collection, it has been more and more engagement with our stakeholders, with our key customers. But as you know, we also do sell quite a lot of seed to government institutions, and some of the governments have been experiencing some liquidity constraints, and that is what has slowed down the payments. But we keep engaging them, and they keep paying, albeit slowly. We would have preferred them to have cleared their debts by now, but we also understand this economy that we are in, particularly worsened by the global pandemic, governments having to reprioritize and channel their resources to other more urgent needs. It has obviously impacted on the rate at which we are paid by these very important stakeholders.
To get into your production and the volumes thereof, you've got carryover stocks of about 24,000 metric tons from the previous season. How strategic is that in as far as ensuring that you are ready for the upcoming or the soon coming planting season?
Well, so it's very, very important. We always try to have some carryover stocks because we are in the agricultural sector. Right. And you are never quite sure of the season that you are going to experience in the following year. So you always try and produce enough and leave a bit to be able to sell in the following year, regardless of whatever season you have. So we are sitting in a healthy stock position. The beauty about our business is we can carry our stocks for 3 to 4 years without them losing viability. And we think the stock holding that we have places us in good stead in terms of responding to early inquiries by governments, early inquiries by the market. We are already seeing some big inquiries from the Malawi government, from the Zimbabwe government, from the CBZ Agro Yield Program, and so on. And these stocks that we have place us in good stead in terms of responding to those inquiries.
Now, can you give us an update with regards to the artificial dryer project here in Zimbabwe and how it is important in driving your operations forward?
Well, so the dryer is a very important part of our value chain. It will affect our operations in a number of ways, but more importantly, in terms of quality, the quality of produce that we will be able to, the quality of seed that we'll be able to send to the market. Generally, what happens is when the rains come and the seed is still in the fields, some seed diseases begin to attack it, diseases like cobrots and so on. So by being able to harvest early and bring the seed to our factory at probably moisture content of plus 30%, we are able to remove the seed early from the farmer's field, bring it into our factory before it is attacked by disease. What that also does is for the farmer, it means this farm is now clear to be used for other activities, whereas currently it's taking longer to remove the seed maize from their factory, and as a result, they end up being constrained in terms of planting the next crop that they would be expecting to plant on the farm. In terms of our own processes, what it also means is we are able to get in seed early and we are able to send it to the market early than normal, where we are actually waiting for the seed to dry on the farmer's field. So it basically quickens our supply chain and value chain in the sense that we are able to take our product quickly to the market. We are able to remove it from the farmer's field quickly. The farmer can now use his land for other purposes. And we also improve the quality of our seed because the seed is in our control at a much earlier stage of the value chain. And therefore, we are able to control a number of activities that happen on the seed.
I realize. When can we expect the project to be completed? Because I think you did make reference to the fact that there have been some delays because of the pandemic.
Yes, so you know, for a project of this nature, there's a lot of equipment that's imported, and some of that equipment has taken time to arrive. There also are projects to do with bringing power to the project. These projects have been affected by the delays that have been occasioned by the pandemic. So we were expecting to open this new plant in September, but it now looks like it will only come on stream next January.
Quite clear. Can you tell us about, you mentioned, of course, imports that get into this artificial dryer, but not only that, there are also several aspects of your operations that require imports. Given the volatility that is playing out in Zimbabwe at the moment, lack of foreign currency, among other issues, how are you navigating these forex challenges to ensure that you are able to keep your boat afloat?
Well, it's been a real challenge, I must admit. I mean, like everyone else, we've obviously been participating on the auction market. But the challenge is not just the auction market. The challenge is also the liquidity situation in the country, because the banks are also feeling the squeeze. So you might be having a banking facility with a particular bank, but on day of drawdown, you find that they actually don't have the actual cash to give to you. So they might say you have a facility of 100 million RTGS, but when you go to them and say, hey, today I need 60 of that 100 million, they will say, well, today we don't have cash to disperse, or if you want us to disperse cash to you, the cash that we have, we are getting it at an expensive price, so we can only lend it to you at so much. So that liquidity is affecting most companies, and I think what has also happened with the coming in of the auction system is the central bank has pulled out quite a lot of cash from the market, and in the process, the liquidity has tightened.
Now, if we look at your volumes in terms of what you have been able to push out onto the market over the past several years, maize seeds pretty much have been a dominant factor therein, averaging north of 70% annually. With the development through your regional operations of you being able to move into other parts of the continent where maize is not exactly a staple, there are other staples like cassava and so on. What are you doing to ensure that you increase the uptake of some of other products that you have as part of your catalog?
Yeah, so we are doing a lot of work, a lot of research. Our scientists are busy trying to develop varieties that work in these new markets. So we are looking at new crops like soyabeans northwards. Our soybean varieties have mainly been for south of the equator. And as you know, soybean is very much a light-sensitive crop. It's sensitive to daylight length. We've been looking at crops like rice. We've been looking at crops like canola. And crops like sorghum, because these are the crops that are being demanded by the markets that are in the north. So this is what we are actively trying to develop. And yeah, it's a process. It won't just happen overnight, but we are trying as much as possible to widen our product basket so that we can be able to supply what the customers require in those markets. You will also know that we've recently gone into the vegetable seed business, and this is on the back of realizing that everyone eats a vegetable of some form or another every day. So the need for quality seeds to be producing vegetables is quite evident, and it's a business that we've also recently started. So we're looking at the main vegetables that are required in our part of the world. Vegetables like tomatoes, onions, cabbage, the collards or rep, as you would know it. This is another area that we are going into to try and have a complete product basket.
Now, can you tell us about your research and development unit? During your AGM, you made reference to the fact that you've got some hybrid products that you have been working on and you are continuously developing them. And even in other markets like South Africa, they've been able to outcompete some of the products that are in those domestic markets. Can you share that in terms of how strategic that unit it is, as well as how you are working to ensure that you keep abreast with global trends?
Yes, so obviously our business starts with research. Research is the cog that holds the business together. Our key competitive advantage is the ability to produce products that do well for the environments that we operate, do well in terms of yields, do well in terms of disease tolerance, do well in terms of responding to the weather pattern. And our research team is tasked with making sure that our products are responding to climate change and are able to give the farmers the best possible yield in their environments. So it is important that they keep on coming up with new products to meet new challenges that the farmers might be facing. It might be new diseases, it might be the changing weather patterns, and so on. It might be pests that are beginning to attack the current varieties that we have. So it's always important that we have a healthy pipeline and we've got products to be releasing almost every year, because there are always new challenges that the farmers are facing, and we have to be coming up with solutions for their problems.
Talking about climatic changes, the weather patterns that you just made reference to, what are you doing to mitigate the risks in as far as the farmers are concerned, given what's playing out with the drought, the El Nino, and developments of such nature?
So that's one of the key research goals for our breeders or scientists, coming up with varieties that suit specific environments. And a lot of it revolves around drought tolerance and maturity. We have got varieties that mature very early. Some of you will recall we used to start with the 4 series. Now we've got a 3 series, which is a variety that even matures quicker than a 4 series. And the whole idea is to take advantage of the little moisture that might fall in a particular area, and that little moisture being able to see the crop to be harvested. So a lot of it has got to do with the period that the crop requires in the field. And we are continuing to develop crops that require less moisture, that are able to be harvested early. So we now have a 3 series. We are already looking at trying to come up with a 2 series, which will be even earlier than our normal varieties. So this is the work that we are doing on the weather or climatic change front.
Interesting. Now let's talk about an issue that would be taking place at the moment and remains to be resolved, an issue to do with SeedCo International, the one that you unbundled in 2018. There's been an issue to do with the suspension of fungibility, as well as the suspension of SeedCo International from trading on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, along, of course, PPC, as well as the old mutual. What efforts have you made in terms of engaging the authorities, and can you give us just an update in terms of what's actually playing out where that is concerned?
Well, so we've been engaging the authorities because the shareholders are obviously worried. They can't trade their shares, and if you can't trade anything, it loses value. So we've been engaging the authorities on the need to resolve the impasse. The authorities have got a proposal which is to basically move all the stocks to the newly to be established Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. There are various regulatory approvals that need to be dealt with, and also internal approvals that we need to deal with. So we are working on those, but we keep engaging the authorities to try and make sure that the impasse is resolved as quickly as possible.
Fair enough. Now let's talk about your operations in light of your expansion north of the continent, precisely where East Africa is concerned, and also where other countries are concerned. I'm sure you've got distribution of your products in about 5 countries where you don't exactly have fully established operations. What is the strategic focus of the group where that is concerned?
Well, so the idea is, first of all, to get the market to move towards our products. So our philosophy is we always start by exporting into new markets. When there is traction and we are selling decent quantities, we then look at establishing local operations. In some of these countries that are far off, though, like West Africa, it becomes difficult to transport product from Southern Africa. So we are having to tweak the model a little bit and almost immediately start producing and processing in those markets. But these businesses take long to develop. They take long to change the market habits, where people are used to planting seed from their own granaries or farm-saved seed. Asking them to switch overnight ain't going to happen. So a lot of education is needed. We have to hold a lot of field days. We have to hold a lot of agronomy and extension functions, just trying to educate the market on the importance of improved seed varieties. And this is work that generally takes place behind the scenes. But this is the stage that we are in most of these developing countries.
Now, in perhaps an industry-wide topical issue, the African Development Bank has indicated that it intends to spend a good 18 billion United States dollars over the next decade or so in a bid to ensure food security on the continent. And one of the key issues that they're looking to address is the issue to do with food security. And looking at the fact that you have been working towards expanding your operations into several other countries, what is your anticipation, and what is the strategic focus in terms of ensuring that you widen your horizon and widen your catchment area in as far as meeting food security for the region as well as for the continent?
Yeah, so at the moment we're operating in 15 countries. As Africa as a whole, rather, has got more than 50 odd countries. And in all those 50 odd countries, people eat. People need to be fed. And our philosophy is we should be everywhere where people are eating. So we are identifying those countries where our products do well, or where our scientists are close to coming up with products that do well in those markets, and we would like to be existing in those markets, opening up business, starting to sell our products in those markets. It just becomes a function of compatibility. Our products, can they be sold in that market or not? As you know, if you take seed from here and you take it to West Africa, it doesn't necessarily follow that it will do as well as it was doing, because these are different climatic conditions that we are talking about, and crops are very dependent on the climatic conditions that they experience. So we have to be trialing a whole lot of our products to make sure they're adaptable to the new environments, as well as doing research with local materials to try and come up with materials that are suitable for those markets. So it's a continuous process: product development, research and development, trying to identify the needs of the target markets, and then coming up with a solution that serves their needs. You can't just take the products that will sell well in Zambia or in Zimbabwe to Nigeria or Ghana. They will struggle because it's different climatic conditions.
And Morgan, as we wrap up, can you give us your outlook for perhaps for the next 1 to 2 years in the markets that you play in, as well as through your associates in those key markets?
Well, so I think the expectation is, because of this pandemic, there generally is going to be a global contraction. And what that means is there's going to be limited incomes that are available to buy our product. Supply chains are going to be affected. Some companies are going to close. Some people will have to revise their budgets and cut their expenditure. Where seed was the main target area for governments in terms of their interventions, we are seeing that it's beginning to compete with the PPE and some other items that are needed to fight this pandemic. So, like all the other people in the industry, we also expect that things will not be necessarily that easy for the industry, for our industry. But thank God, like I said earlier on, we've been designated an essential industry. So we should still be able to plod on, probably at a reduced level because of the constraints that everyone else in our environment will be facing. But we are hopeful that we should still have a very good business, albeit in a world that is struggling in terms of how to handle COVID.
Well, that was quite comprehensive there, Morgan. Thank you for making the time to be with us on the Earnings Review.
All right. Thank you very much, Eben.
Fantastic. Good luck.
Excellent. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
That, of course, was Morgan, the Group Chief Executive for SeedCo International, as well as, of course, SeedCo Ltd. Now, joining us on set for an analysis on their operations is our very own Chief Analyst at Equity Access, Respect Kwenzi. Respect, good evening, and thank you for joining us on the Earnings Review.
Thank you, Eben. It's always my pleasure, and good evening to you too.
Fantastic. Very quickly, Respect, I want us to have a look at a sneak peek into some of the highlights from the trading update that was issued by Morgan during their most recent annual general meeting. Let's have a look.
There's the asset base and the intellectual property to weather the challenges. It is proving hard to retain essential skills. We've seen a few of our key skills, particularly on the research side, leave to go to other jurisdictions where they believe they can get better value. The business is aiming to defend the regional growth, which was registered in prior year on the backdrop of positive early rainfall forecast. The general rainfall forecast that has been doing the rounds is that there will be a La Nina in Southern Africa, which means generally improved rainfall, and governments will be taking a huge part in trying to refill their grain reserves, which have been depleted. Many of the production entities have struggled because of the lockdown, so we expect a lot of interventions from government to make sure that there's food security. In terms of input programs, a presidential input program in Zimbabwe is expected to be at the same levels as prior year, while a smart agriculture program for commercial farmers through banks is also expected to be rolled out. Zambia has announced an input program at the same levels as prior year, And Malawi has announced an input program which is 3 times what it was in prior year, and where they were targeting 900,000 families last year. This year they are targeting 4.2 million families. So business on that front should generally be good on the inputs program. On the open market, we know that people need to eat, but again, we are aware of the general challenges that people are having in terms of liquidity because of the COVID-imposed challenges. So we still expect the business to make a decent profit, but the quantum and the magnitude is very difficult to comment on because we don't really know how the season is going to pan out, particularly given the challenges that I've alluded to. That's what I wanted to update the shareholders on. Chairman, I've already talked about what has happened in Nigeria and Kenya and the vegetables. So I will take questions here.
That, of course, was Morgan giving us some highlights in terms of their outlook in this very operating environment. Respect, to begin with, Morgan did make reference to the fact that there is a brain drain that is actually hitting their research and development unit. Can you give us a comment on that very development?
In generic terms, I'm sure when you are losing competent talent that's within your organization, definitely it weighs on the productivity, also on profitability, as well as even growth prospects. So obviously, if that's what the company is undergoing, which is what they alluded to, it simply weighs on stability of the organization. It also can weigh on productivity and efficiency, therefore. So I think it's really a big issue given the broad overarching macroeconomic environment, which is quite harsh. It's depleting purchasing power, and most incomes cannot really match the growth that's coming due to price fluctuations. And so it's industry-wide. So you would rather, it's quite predictable that whenever someone gets opportunity to be in a country where there's stable earnings, definitely you would move. So that's quite a function of the environment. It happened in 2008. It's happening again. People are constantly evaluating whether they want to have a career here or they could go elsewhere where they can get a bit of stability and maybe revise at a certain point. So that's really fundamental for the general economy. It really speaks to what we are facing as a nation, as Zimbabwe.
Now let's talk about a positive development where there are predictions that we're likely to experience a La Nina, which is pretty much the opposite of an El Nino. To put it in English or in simple terms, that means there is a projection that we're likely to experience a significant amount of rainfall during the forthcoming rainy season. And what do you think this would mean for the firm, and how best do you think they would position themselves to make the most of that opportunity, if I may say?
Yeah, with the hope that it doesn't get to be as excessive. I think this is a good development. Why? Because zooming in on Zimbabwe as a key market for SeedCo, we have experienced the drought conditions over the past 2 years, and over the past 5 years alone, 3 of those were in drought position. So obviously, looking at the structure of our economy and how pivotal agriculture is to economic growth and its economic contribution, it definitely means a lot to our GDP prospects, as well as even looking at individual organizations which sell seed. It also means that they could stimulate sales by targeting some of those markets which are set to receive better rainfall. So I think this is one of the reasons why some of the countries are actually introducing these or increasing their funding to some presidential schemes of sort. So that's true of Zambia, that's true of Zimbabwe, and also Malawi, and some other countries as well beyond the Southern Africa. So I think it's a positive development. And I mean, generally, I would expect that we possibly increase our land, which is under irrigation, from just 2% to something maybe between 10 and 15 because it hedges against some unforeseen circumstances such as drought. So yes, it's a positive thing that we are going to receive better rains this season, but these constant fluctuations in terms of rainfall pattern have really affected our food sufficiency, our economic growth, and even prospects for producers such as SeedCo. So yes, it's a positive development, but I would envisage a future where we do not we should not have to guess what happens in our business or in our country or in terms of food sufficiency and agriculture, given how pivotal this sector is.
Lastly, just before we go, can you tell us about the growth prospects of this very firm? They have a footprint somewhat in 15 African countries. What can they leverage on in terms of pushing their agenda forward in other parts of the continent?
In terms of leverage, I think this is a Pan-African group, so obviously they know the markets, they're quite knowledgeable about the African markets, having started in Zim and developed to other regional markets. And so obviously the knowledge of markets is one of those things that they could leverage on and use competitively against any potential or future competition that might come. And looking at Lima Grain as part of their shareholders, this is they've quite a strong base. They're quite one of the leading, part of the leading top 3 producers in the whole world in terms of agriculture. So I think it pivots them because they can source funding for expansion in the region, and that's an advantage to them. So all these are quite some pivots, and there's some exciting developments in East Africa, political stability and so forth. All those are actually good for growth in terms of the economy, but also in agro-driven growth. So I think agriculture is at the center of most African economies in terms of sparing economic growth, and it's treated as such in all these different jurisdictions. So obviously they are quite positioned as a company, and they can explore further in these African markets.
Thank you, Respect, for the perspectives. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and to visit our informative website, www.equityaccess.net. Remember to catch us every Tuesday, every Thursday, 7 p.m. Central African Time on this very same platform. Ibn Mabunda from Harare, Danki, and ciao.